Neighbourhood Watch. Number 12. Mrs. Edith Bennet had lived on Hawthorne Close for nearly 40 years, long enough to see the street transform from a quiet cul-de-sac of young families into a patchwork of newcomers, rental homes, and unfamiliar faces. The old sycamore tree she once loved for its shade now scraped long bony fingers against her bedroom window at night. The daylight felt different these days too, thinner, diluted somehow, though she was never sure if that was age creeping in, or something altogether darker. By 73, Mrs. Bennet had become the unofficial gatekeeper of the close, whether anyone wanted her to or not. Her lace curtains were permanently drawn just so, far enough for her to watch without being seen, close enough that nobody could accuse her of nosiness. Every day at precisely 10:30, she brewed a cup of Earl Grey, positioned her chair at the window, and watched, well, everything. And more importantly, everyone. The neighbours called her mad behind her back. She'd overheard them on more than one occasion, the postman whispering "poor old bat" to the delivery driver, the school children laughing as they called her the witch of Hawthorne Close. But Mrs. Bennet was not mad, not at all. She simply saw what others refused to look at, like the children of number 14, who screamed and kicked footballs at ungodly hours, leaving scuff marks on her fence, or the teenagers who smoked at the bottom of the street and threw their litter in her garden, or Mr. Hughes from number 7, who definitely was up to something involving those late-night Amazon parcels, and that shed he never let anyone nearby. Most of her calls to the police went ignored now. They knew her voice the second they picked up. "Mrs. Bennet, is it noise again? Children again? A suspicious cat again?" She always insisted she wasn't making things up. And even though they humoured her with gentle, pitying tones, she caught the shift in their voices. She's lonely. She's losing it. Still, she kept watch, because someone had to. And recently something had changed. Something had arrived. The Samans, a Romanian couple, middle-aged, pale, stiff smiles that never reached their eyes. They'd moved into number 9 2 weeks earlier, with little more than 2 suitcases, and a crate of what looked like old books. No furniture lorry, no belongings, no chatter or neighbourly introductions, no past, just a slow, heavy unease that fell upon the street the moment they arrived. Mrs. Bennet felt it first, like a cold draft along the spine. Rumours circulated quickly, that they were reclusive, that they never opened their curtains, that they kept candles burning at all hours of the night, that they spoke to no one except the occasional visitor who arrived in a strange rust-coloured van at ungodly hours. But Mrs. Bennet didn't bother with rumour. She trusted what she saw, and what she saw from her window at 10:30 every morning was this: Mr. and Mrs. Saman standing perfectly still in their back garden, not speaking, not gardening, just standing for 10, sometimes 15 minutes, their heads tilted slightly back as if listening to something no one else could hear. Mrs. Bennet watched them, fingers tightening around her mug, heart knocking against her ribs. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. But nobody listened to her anymore. Not yet, at least. The boy Jack. Jack Hollinger had lived on the street since the day he was born. 16 now. Tall, sharp-jawed, messy light brown hair, always wearing that black hoodie his mother hated. But he was a good lad, polite, clever, the sort who still held doors open for people. Mrs. Bennet liked him. He always waved whenever he saw her, even though the other children sniggered behind his back for it. "You shouldn't humour her," they'd say. "She'll think you're one of her spies." But Jack didn't care. "She's just old," he'd reply. "Not evil." If only kindness could save him. The night everything changed, the sky was heavy and starless. A strange stillness rolled through Hawthorne Close, blanketing the houses and pressing down the air until even the foxes hid in the hedges. Jack had gone out for some fresh air, a torch in one hand, headphones in his ears. It was just gone midnight when he walked past number 12, Mrs. Bennet's house. She saw him from her upstairs window. What she also saw was the shape above him. At first she thought it was a strangely large owl, but then it unfolded, and unfolded again, wings stretching far too wide, far too thin. A leathery membrane catching what little light existed, talons like curled black hooks, and an elongated head with a narrow jaw splitting open, revealing teeth that were not shaped to tear, but to scoop. Mrs. Bennet froze, breath locked in her throat. The creature clung upside down from the sycamore tree above Jack, swaying slightly, red eyes glowing like coals. She tried to shout through the closed window, but no sound came out. Jack paused, looking around, sensing movement. The thing dropped from the tree. Mrs. Bennet screamed. Jack did not. He barely had time to look up. The creature struck like a shadow, swallowing him whole. Jack's body disappeared into the leaves. A muffled sound, half scream, half gasp, escaped before being abruptly cut off. Then silence. The branches shuddered. A dark shape climbed, pulled, contorted, and vanished into the night sky with its prey. Mrs. Bennet called the police immediately, sobbing, babbling, voice shaking, so hard she could barely form sentences. A boy, Jack, the Hollinger boy, gone, taken, creature, wings, teeth, you must come. The operator spoke to her slowly, like one would to a confused toddler. Mrs. Bennet, is this about the neighborhood children again? No, you fool, he's dead. We'll send someone in the morning. No, now. But morning came first. Body in the woods. Jack's mother raised the alarm around 8 o'clock when she found his bed empty and phone still charging beside it. His father rang all of Jack's friends, but none had seen him. By 9, the police were out searching. Mrs. Bennet waited by her window with shaking hands, replaying the horror again and again. Her cheeks were stiff with dried tears. Her hair clung wild against her forehead. At 10:30, her usual watch time, she forced herself to the window, almost afraid of what she'd see. What she saw instead were blue lights flashing at the end of the street. Jack had been found, in Hawthorne Woods. The officers blocked off the footpath long before the neighbors heard the whispers, but rumors spread fast. One of the officers left in tears. Another vomited behind the hedgerow. Jack's parents were not allowed to see the body. Nobody was, except the coroner, who was overheard saying one thing before the officers shut him up. No animal around here could have done this. Mrs. Bennet already knew that. She marched straight out of her house in her dressing gown and slippers, making a beeline for the cluster of police cars. "I told you!" she shrieked. "I told you last night!" The officers tried to guide her back home gently, but she slapped their hands away. "Don't you touch me. Jack is dead because you people think I'm senile. Mrs. Bennet, please go home. We don't want to arrest you." She gasped, scandalized. "Arrest me. Arrest me. Arrest the thing that murdered that boy." A crowd had gathered. Neighbors shook their heads. Some whispered. Some scoffed. And the Saman stood at the edge of it all, perfectly still, watching her with unreadable faces. Their eyes were dark, bottomless, too calm. Mrs. Bennet shivered. They were listening again, just like in their garden, just like always. Hawthorne Close. 2 nights after Jack's body was discovered, the dreams began. Mrs. Bennet awoke around 3 in the morning, drenched in sweat, convinced that something was standing at the foot of her bed. Something tall and narrow, with folding limbs and tiny, glowing embers for eyes. But when she turned on the lamp, nothing was there. The next night, she dreamt of the Saman standing outside her house, hands raised as though in prayer, whispering in a language she didn't understand. Harsh consonants and slithering vowels. Their voices were like wind dragging across gravestones. She woke with a nosebleed. On the 3rd night, she woke screaming. The dream had shown her something else, something worse. A huge bat-like creature crouched on her roof, claws scraping tiles, its head twisting unnaturally as it sniffed the air. Searching, hunting, her. She found muddy claw-like prints on her window ledge that morning, far too large for a fox or bird. But no one believed her, except one person, Jack's father, the Hollingers investigate. Mark Hollinger had aged 10 years in 48 hours. The skin beneath his eyes sank into bruised hollows, and his fingers wouldn't stop trembling. He knocked on Mrs. Bennet's door the next afternoon. She opened it with dread pooling in her stomach. "Mr. Hollinger, I'm so sorry. Tell me what you saw." His voice was quiet, hollow, hard. Mrs. Bennet swallowed. "You'll think I'm mad." "I don't care. Tell me." So she did. Every detail, every terrible second of it. The wings, the talons, the horrible jaws, the way Jack was lifted, silenced, stolen into the night. Mark didn't blink. He didn't flinch. When she finished, he exhaled shakily. "My wife saw something the day before Jack disappeared." Mrs. Bennet's breath caught. "What?" "Lights. Through the Saman's window. Flickering lights. Like fire. Candles, maybe." Mrs. Bennet's hands began to shake. "And chanting," Mark said quietly. "Something low, rhythmic, like incantations. She thought she was imagining it. She didn't tell me until this morning." Mrs. Bennet's lips trembled. "They've cursed us. The Samans. They brought something with them." Mark didn't argue, didn't laugh, didn't dismiss her. Instead he said, "Tonight, we go inside their house." The house at number 9. It was 11:30 when Mrs. Bennet crept down the street with Mark and his wife, Linda. The night was colder than any she remembered. The air felt as if it had weight, thick and pressing against her lungs. Even the moon seemed reluctant to shine. The Saman's house was dark, silent, lifeless. Yet she felt watched as they approached. Mark carried a crowbar. Linda held a torch. Mrs. Bennet, trembling, clutched a walking stick she doubted would be useful against monsters or devils, but it felt better than being empty-handed. Mark forced the door quietly. The lock gave with a soft crack. The smell hit them instantly. Rot, old stone, something like burnt incense and damp soil, and beneath it all, something metallic. Blood. Mrs. Bennet didn't dare say it. They stepped inside. The hallway was bare. No pictures, no coat rack, no furniture, just peeling wallpaper and dusty floorboards. "This house is empty," Linda whispered. "No," Mrs. Bennet murmured. "It isn't." They followed the smell. It led to the basement door. Mark swallowed. "They've been down here." Mrs. Bennet placed a shaking hand on the banister. "Be ready," she whispered. They descended. The basement was lit only by the torch, which wavered as Linda's hands shook. Then the light found the center of the room, and they all stopped breathing. A circle of black candles, animal bones arranged in spirals, symbols carved into the floorboards, strange symbols, harsh angles cutting into the wood. A book lying open on a stone slab, tattered, ancient, its pages covered in looping Romanian script. Mrs. Bennet felt her knees weaken. The Samans had been conjuring something, feeding something, worshipping something. Then the torch moved again, and found the crate. Inside it were scraps of torn clothing, black hoodie material. Mrs. Bennet screamed. Linda choked on a sob. Mark stepped back, face contorting with grief and rage. "They fed him to it," he whispered. "They fed our boy to that thing." Just then, a scratching sound, from upstairs. Mrs. Bennet froze. Linda clapped a hand over her mouth. Mark raised the crowbar. Soft, slow footsteps moved across the floorboards above. The Samans had returned. Fire and blood. "What do we do?" Linda whispered. Mark's jaw clenched. "We end this." He grabbed the stone slab, flipping it onto the black candles. The flames guttered, then roared as wax spilled. He swung the crowbar into the nearest bookcase, splintering it. He kicked over the bone circle. Linda pulled Mrs. Bennet toward the stairs. Go! Go! Footsteps quickened upstairs. The samans were moving. Fast. Too fast. Mrs. Bennet reached the top of the stairs first. Linda behind her. Mark last. The front door was just ahead. Then a shadow moved across the hallway. Mr. Saman stepped into view. Not pale now. Not calm. But smiling. A wide, unnatural grin splitting his face. Teeth sharpened to points. His eyes glowed faintly red. Mrs. Saman appeared behind him, her neck tilting at an unnatural angle, bones clicking. Mrs. Bennet felt her heart nearly stop. Mark didn't hesitate. He swung the crowbar. It struck Mr. Saman's skull with a sickening crack. But the man didn't fall. He simply kept smiling. Mark swore and shoved him, grabbing Linda's arm. Run! They bolted for the door. Mrs. Bennet stumbled onto the street first, sucking in cold air. Mark dragged Linda out just behind her. Then he turned and hurled a glass bottle of solvent, taken from his shed the night before, into the doorway. He lit a match and threw it. Flames erupted instantly, racing up the wooden frame like hungry orange serpents. The samans shrieked, no longer human voices but guttural, layered howling that rattled the windows of the houses. Mrs. Bennet felt her skin crawl. The fire grew, fast. The neighbors began to stir, stepping outside, gasping, shouting for the fire brigade. But the shrieking from inside number 9 grew louder, higher, a sound of something not dying, but transforming. The windows shattered outward, spraying glass across the street. Smoke turned pitch black. The Hollingers grabbed Mrs. Bennet and pulled her back, away from the house. And then, a shape burst through the flames, wings unfurling. Huge, black, dripping fire. The same monster that had taken Jack, only larger now. Fed. Mrs. Bennet screamed. The monster. The creature flew into the night sky, circling above the burning house. Its wings cast a monstrous shadow across the street, swallowing the moonlight. Mrs. Bennet stumbled backwards, legs trembling. It's coming. For me, she whispered. It wants me. Mark put himself in front of her. No, we face it together. But the monster didn't descend. Not yet. It landed instead on the sycamore tree directly above Mrs. Bennet's house, where it had taken Jack, where it had watched her for nights, where it had waited. Mrs. Bennet whimpered. It was sent for me, she breathed. The samans cursed me. Linda clutched her hand. No, she said desperately. No, they summoned it. But it killed Jack. We end it, Mrs. Bennet. Together. The monster screeched, a sound that tore through the marrow of their bones. Then it swooped, straight for Mrs. Bennet. Mark shoved her aside. The creature missed by inches, talons ripping chunks from the pavement. It hissed and ascended again. Mrs. Bennet crawled backwards on her hands, heart hammering. Her walking stick lay near her feet, her only weapon. She grasped it. The Hollingers stood beside her, Mark gripping his crowbar, Linda holding a shard of broken wood from the tree the creature had struck. The monster swooped again. They ran. The stand. They fled toward the woods, perhaps stupid, perhaps desperate, but there was nowhere else to go. The street was chaos, neighbors screaming, the fire brigade arriving, hoses blasting against a house that seemed to fight the water. The monster followed. Its wings beat the air violently, stirring leaves and debris into small cyclones. Mrs. Bennet nearly fell 3 times, but Linda held her arm firm. They reached the tree line. The woods swallowed them in darkness. The creature's screech pierced the sky above, close, hunting. Here, Mark whispered harshly. Up against the hill. Cover yourselves. They crouched under a low, rocky overhang. The air smelled of wet earth and pine. The monster landed somewhere just beyond the trees, branches snapping beneath its weight. Mrs. Bennet closed her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. If I hadn't watched them, if I hadn't noticed them, they wouldn't have cursed me. Jack would be alive. Mark shook his head vehemently. No, they killed Jack because they were evil, not because of you. The monster sniffed, a deep snuffling, wet and slick, like something dragging its breath across the ground. It was close, too close. A branch cracked above them, then silence. Mrs. Bennet gripped her walking stick tighter. Mark raised his crowbar. Linda steadied her makeshift spear. The creature dropped from the trees behind them. They spun as one. Mark swung first, crowbar smashing against the creature's jaw. It shrieked. Linda stabbed its wing, tearing the membrane. Mrs. Bennet, driven by pure terror, jabbed her walking stick into its chest. The creature recoiled, screeching in rage, but not injured enough. It lunged. Mrs. Bennet fell backwards. Talons grazed her shoulder, slicing fabric and skin. Hot blood ran down her arm. The monster's mouth opened above her, teeth glistening. Mark slammed the crowbar down again, and again. Linda screamed as she thrust the wooden shard into its eye. The monster convulsed violently. It reared back, stumbled, collapsed. Its wings twitched, curling inward like dying leaves. Mark didn't stop until its head split, dark blood oozing onto the forest floor. The screech that escaped the creature was quieter now, a final, rattling sound that echoed briefly before fading completely into the night. Silence fell. Real silence. Mrs. Bennet trembled, tears streaming down her face. Linda knelt beside her. "Are you hurt?" "A little," she whispered, "but alive." Mark exhaled shakily, chest heaving. "It's over," he said. But Mrs. Bennet wasn't so sure. The ashes. By dawn, the fire brigade had extinguished number 9. Nothing remained of the Samans but burnt bone and ash. The police questioned everyone on Hawthorne Close, though nobody said a word about the monster. The official report blamed arson and structural collapse. Jack's death was ruled animal attack, though privately, the officers admitted the wounds didn't match anything native. Mrs. Bennet was taken to hospital for stitches. The doctors told her she was lucky. The claw marks were deep. Another inch, and the artery would have gone. The Hollingers visited her later that day, sitting beside her bed, silently. "We move next month," Linda whispered. "We can't stay here. Not anymore." Mrs. Bennet nodded, tearful. "I understand." "What about you?" Mark asked. "Will you stay?" Mrs. Bennet looked out the window. The world beyond seemed brighter now, softer, safer. Children played in the street below. Life continued, but she still felt something else. A whisper in the wind, a shadow in the corner of the ward. Something watching, waiting. "No," she said softly. "I think I've done enough watching." The Hollingers squeezed her hands, grateful. But as she drifted off to sleep that night, she dreamt of number 9 burning again. The Samans' shrieks echoing through the flames, their chanting crawling through her skull. And when she woke, she found a small object on her bedside table, a charred fragment of bone, wrapped in a torn scrap of Romanian parchment. Words scrawled in black ink. "A curse ends only when its bearer dies." Mrs. Bennet's breath hitched. The monster had not been the curse. She was. And something had followed her. Something still hungry. The end.